Come sit on this side.
Okay, welcome to meeting order. Please stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, everyone, thanks for coming in tonight and coming in early for the presentations of those outgoing school board members that are here. I would adopt the agenda, is there a motion to adopt the agenda? Rob, thank you for a second. Discussion? No discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passed, thank you very much. At this time, I have no consideration of visitor's card. Anybody in the audience have a card not turned in? I do not have one yet. Okay, no consideration of visitors, thank you very much. We have a consent agenda. Is there a motion to accept the consent agenda? Ms. Bam, vote, thank you. Gil's a second. Discussion on consent agenda. Discussion? No discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes, thank you very much. And first time up, information report. We have the Truth and Taxation hearing that's held once a year by all government agencies. Ms. Dee will be talking about our district. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Starr, members of the school board, Superintendent Anderson, and community members. Tonight's the district's Truth and Taxation hearing for the 24-25 payable school year for this tax, Later this evening, the school board will be asked to approve the levy certification. It's for taxes in 2025 and for the 25-26 school year. So on the agenda today, we'll be talking about the background of school funding, some property tax levy information, budgets, and then information about the district's 25 school district budget and proposed taxes, as I mentioned, for 24 and 25, and then opportunity for public comment afterwards. So truth and taxation requirements before the final levy certification will take place later, as I mentioned. We will have a hearing tonight, and it's very specific on the rules and the content requirements. Most specifically, that we must talk about the current year budget, and that with a proposed tax levy, including any percentage increase or decrease, and then the special purposes and reasons for the taxes that they're being increased or decreased. And then at the end, there'll be an opportunity to have some public comment. So school district funding is very set in the manner in which we propose and go forward with our funding. It's highly regulated, and revenue formulas, tax policy, and tax levy process are established through state law. It's important to note that while schools can levy underneath the amount, they cannot levy more than the amount that's authorized. The school board then will submit referendas to voters for approval if we were to have an operating referenda or a capital referenda as well. So in the levy development, under the general levy, you can see the categories that are included, that data that we must provide to the state of Minnesota in order to get our levy developed for the board's consideration. In the community education, you can see the categories there. It's mostly based on population of our adults, as well as looking at the children that are under age 5. Debt service levy is specific to bond principal and interest payment. Those are for voter approved bonds, as well as facility bonds that are authorized by the school board. So St. Francis Area Schools tax levy, 3 components of it: the general fund, community service, and debt service. The general fund makes up 51.2% of the tax levy. Community service, the smallest, at 2.5% of the tax levy. And then the debt service, about 46.3%. Again, you can see on the right-hand side what those different categories reflect. The general fund, which is the fund that most people are familiar with, it provides all that funding for regular and special education, any instructional programs, transportation. It includes our facilities, capital projects, administration, and all of that. And then community education services fall under that community service, as well as adult basic education and ECFE. And then debt service, as I mentioned, just those principal and interest payments that have been either authorized by the school district or approved. So the levy certification process takes about 6 months worth of work. We start off with that data that I mentioned in the earlier slide that we must submit to the Department of Education. In September, the school board authorizes a preliminary levy certification based on the data we provided, based on formulas and the information that the state of Minnesota has already. So they levy at what's called the maximum, and that's just to give the flexibility of the school either has some more information that the state needs or the state has to work out the final details. But you'll see tonight that the levy pretty much stayed the same as what was projected at the September meeting. In November then, with all that information, it provides the county an opportunity to mail out the proposed tax statements. Those have been mailed out to the local community members for their review. It also lists on that statement then where the truth and taxation hearings will be held for all jurisdictions. So we're here tonight, December 9th, to have the truth and taxation hearing. After the hearing and any public comment, then the board will be asked to do that final levy certification, which then has requirements from the business office to send in a certification that we'll ask Clerk Amy Kelly to sign, as well as then submitting any information to the county in addition to that. So the levy certification process kind of spans over 3 years, and typical in school finance for a number of things, it does go over several years. So the school board adopts the final levy in 2024. The taxes are collected in 25, so calendar year that those are collected, and that's in May and October. And then in fiscal year 26, that's our school year. So the 25-26 school year, which is a fiscal year starting July 1st of 2025. So next, when we look at our budget, which the board adopted back in June of 2024, we have all of the categories on the left-hand side based on different funds that we are required to have for our budgets. The majority of the budget, as you can see, is in the general fund. That's majority consists of all the K-12 educational programs. Next is food service and nutrition services, community service, construction, debt service, and then internal service, and that's for our self-insured dental insurance. So you can see the revenue and the expense a little higher than the revenue. And in different categories, there's specific reasons for that that we looked at previous times. The biggest portion that's causing the expense to be over is on the construction side. And it's not that we're overspending, it's that we had funds in reserve that are now being spent on the construction projects that we received for either bonds or long-term facility. So the estimated fund balance, the reason you see an asterisk on it is because we have not yet formally adopted the final fiscal year 24. We'll have the audit results, they're nearly done, will be submitted to the state in time, but the presentation will take place in January. So these have not been adjusted for final 24 audit figures. So $22 million estimated for the fund balance in the general fund. And just as a reminder, and there's a slide coming up with further descriptions on it, but there are several categories that fall into the fund balance. And that includes the assigned fund balance, restricted fund balance, non-spendable, and then the assigned. Those all 4 categories make up that total fund balance for the general fund. The next slides mostly will be about the general fund since it's the largest portion of our budget. On the left, you can see the revenue slide. 92.8% of our revenue comes from state sources and local taxes. In St. Francis School District, that 81.4% is a little higher than most school districts not most, but a lot of school districts. And the fact is that we don't have an operating referendum nor a capital project referendum, which would then change that red pie, piece of the pie a little differently. The nice part about having a little bit bigger pie coming from local property taxes is that it's a little more stable than, say, the state aids. We're at the whim of whether or not the state has enough funding to move forward with that. So anytime we can have better and more support from the local property taxers, the more stable it is for the school district. So grateful for the portion that we do have here. Then on the expense side, 79.3% of the expenses are on salaries and benefits. And as I've said in other presentations, anytime that you are in a very service-oriented situation as we are in a school district, your salaries and benefits are going to be your greatest cost. Next is your purchase services at 9.3%, and then another category, capital purchases, that's operating capital, whether it's equipment or some of it is our long-term facility equipment as well. Then I like to look at how do we spend our dollar. Every dollar is spent about 81.3 cents on every dollar goes directly to supporting students. So if you take the 72.51 cents instruction and instructional support listed on the bottom, and couple that with the 8.84 cents for pupil support, that gets you to that 81.35 cents. And I like to show this because, you know, sometimes people dwell on the fact that there's so much administration, but when you really look at this, the majority is, and where it should be, spent on direct support of students or directly educating them. 11.23 cents is on operating and fixed costs. That would be your maintenance, your utilities, all of those things related to operating the school buildings and district buildings. And then 3.1 cents is on district and school administration. This includes the superintendent's office, it includes all of our building principals, it includes costs associated with the school board as well. And then 4.23 cents is on district support. That includes finance office, HR, it includes any, some of the technology areas as well, communications, the school elections, research and elections as well. So all of that is part of how we spend the dollars in the general fund. So as I promised, I'm going to talk a little bit about fund balances. Fund balances, some people might call it a rainy day. I never liked that term, but I say that only because I know certain people are familiar with that. It's the money set aside after your revenue less your expense, and that's your fund balance. And so the first category is non-spendable. Those are consistent with amounts that are not in spendable form, such as prepaid items. It's inventory and it's long-term assets. So it's required, it's a small portion of the fund balances that are set aside. Next is the assigned. Those are amounts that are intended to be used for just a specific purpose for the district. So one category is the auditors require us to set aside money when we've not had a balanced budget and our expenses are greater than our revenue. They will ask us to set that money aside to be used to cover those expenses. On the restricted side, when it says constraints imposed by state statutes, these are mostly funds where the revenue comes in with a finance code and it has to be spent out of that same category. It's set aside specific. An example is staff development. Those funds are set aside. Operating capital is another. Long-term facility maintenance are examples of that, where the money comes in for a specific purpose and we must spend it out of that same purpose. Committed fund balances are those designated for a specific purpose by the school board. And we don't have any committed funds, but this one is used if there's the thought that the school district might be purchasing land, for an example, and then might set aside some money for that specific purpose and set that aside. It does require board action to put the money in there, and it takes board action to take that back out. And then the last one is the residual. After all those categories, then the residual classification for that is the unassigned, and the unassigned fund balance is the one that most people are familiar with, that looking at what is our funds that are available, should we have a shortfall or need to spend money, we have too much high utility costs or snow removal in a particular year, that's one of the categories that would help with that. Excuse me. So the general fund estimated fund balance, the yellow bar in all of these is the non-spendable, the green is the restricted, the red is the assigned, and then the unassigned is the blue. And what I want to point out when I was reviewing this again today was looking at that restricted category and the unrestricted, and those are the two that really have changed the most. The restricted, set 21 and 22 in particular, that's during COVID. So a lot of those ESSER funds and the funds came in, they were very restricted. And so that jumped that up, and the unassigned was at a lower amount because most of our funding was coming in that category. And you're seeing how that kind of balances off. Just a slight decrease in 2024 from where we were the previous year. And then in 2025, now this hasn't been updated to the final audit, this might change a little bit. Seeing that decrease going down a little bit more, part of that has to do with the fact that we are also decreasing in our number of students that we have, and therefore some less funding that's coming in. So next, if we look at the 24 payable, 25 tax levy, we're going to find that there's a few reasons on why we do the things we do. So what causes our increases and decreases? There's really 4 categories that cause this. We have changes in state law. We have pupil unit and population changes, market value or tax capacity changes, and then changes in expenditures. So 1, 2, and 3, really the school district has little control of any of that. Changes in expenditures, that can be part of what the board authorizes or things that we have going forward that might change the levy to either decrease or increase. So the proposed tax levy coming up for 25, which is for the 25 school year, 25-26 school year again, just over $6.6 million in the general fund, $325,000 in community service, and just over $6 million for debt service for just under $13 million. And I'll show you a slide coming up. This is about $1 million less than it was a year ago. And again, I'll describe that and talk about that as well. So a 7.15% decrease in the school district's tax levy. So first we're going to focus on the general fund levy for market value, referendum market value, excuse me. So there's 2 kind of categories within the general fund, referendum market value and net tax capacity values. And the difference between that is that referendum value, it excludes the house, garage, and 1 acre for agricultural property. So in communities where there's large farming areas, this is really important, especially when they want to try to pass a referendum. So an operating referenda does not affect their land, only the house, garage, and 1 acre, which is similar to most of us in our homes, right? So they're trying to equalize that a little bit. So the various categories here for the levy, just up a little bit in the local optional revenue, and part of that has to do with increases or changes in our student population, but also a change in the funding formulas for that as well. So sometimes in categories, if the state aid decreases, the leveling factor is the levy portion of it. So to keep the district whole, if the law changes where the state aid increases, the levy will decrease, and then vice versa. The equity, and this is referenda equity, when school districts do not have an operating referenda, this is a balancing factor to help with that. And so as the overall levies for operating levies go up, as more communities either raise their levies or have an inflation factor or pass an additional one, it changes that, and that provides a little bit of extra money for the school district. The biggest thing to look on this slide is that last row, excuse me, the adjustments. So In 2024, there was a right sizing to the enrollment projections overall for our levy. And in doing that, we had kind of been under enrolling estimates. Our estimated enrollment was under in previous years. And last year, I believe Ron talked to you all about this, we right-sized that. And what that does is it causes an adjustment to make up for the levy you didn't receive in those previous years. So it's a little high. Now our levy is what I would call kind of right-sizing, right? So our enrollment is a little more to actual than it was in the past. So we don't have that huge adjustment in this year because it's a little more accurate, a little more online with what our enrollment is. So it looks like we're losing money, and in fact, we aren't losing money, we're just not gaining that big adjustment that was really for previous year adjustments. So next, I know this is a little bit smaller, when we look at the general fund net tax capacity, not huge changes on this. The one exception would be when you look at the total LTFM. And for our community members, LTFM stands for long-term facility maintenance. And that is going up by $286, almost $287,000. And you're gonna see a similar entry, but the other way in our debt service, and I'll explain that a little further. But the district is eligible for LTFM based on their student population, the age and square footage of the buildings that we have, and we have a certain threshold, a certain dollar amount, and we can either use that as an ongoing every year type of a levy, or we can issue bonds to take care of some immediate needs. And so we have a decrease on the debt side, and therefore we're eligible to bring this, the pay-as-you-go kind of work as you go, increase that by that 286. So keep that number kind of in mind. It'll come in play in a few slides going forward. Next, when we look at the community services levy, this is the basic community ed, early childhood, and you can read through the categories. The biggest changes here have to do with school-age childcare as well as adjustments. Overall decrease is 14.8%. This is one where the increase in the state aid for basic community education is a factor, which lowers the district's levy. And then second, we right-size the school-age childcare. So some of this is those adjustments that you see for previous years based on that change in state aid. School-age childcare, we're getting closer to what we're actually submitting for expenses to be reimbursed. And then that adjustment figure of 36,000 that you see in 25, that is related to the previous year, which was a little higher than it could be. So we're lowering that amount. So overall, a $56,000 decrease in our levy for community services. So next, when we look at the debt service levy, and this is to pay principal and interest payments, the first three lines in there are for our regular bond payments. So voter approved bonds that have been issued. And the reduction for debt excess, the explanation for you to understand is when we issue bonds and we levy for the principal and interest, we must levy at 105% of what those principal and interest payments are. That's by state statute. That is to assure bondholders that they are being repaid, or that the district has enough money to repay those principal and interest payments. At some point in time, that 105% becomes a little more than is needed in our fund balance to cover that. As well as the district has done some refunding of bonds, refinancing bonds. When you do that, that lowers your principal and interest. So the state does a calculation to come up with that number. This year it's a little higher at 420 compared to 211. So it looks like a greater reduction, which means money's going back to our taxpayers and our community. So lowering our overall debt service for that first portion. The second portion, and I remind you that I mentioned that 280,000 under long-term facility on the general fund. Now we're seeing the flip side. So we've paid off some of our long-term facility debt, those bonds issued for facilities related to long-term facilities. And therefore the amount of money that we need to recoup to pay that principal and interest are decreased. But it's over on the general fund. So it's kind of a wash between those two. And just like the regular debt service, then the reduction for debt excess on the facility side, same explanation for those bonds as well. So we have to levy 105%, then we do a calculation for the state to take back money and it gets returned to taxpayers with a lower tax. So overall, 8.5% increase on our debt service levy, comparing year to year. So the local property tax levy, the state limits the local property tax by those items listed below. It's our pupil counts, the eligible expenditures such as in childcare, as well as unemployment is another one. Our population, any voter authorized referendums is included, and then district property valuations. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. But those are the items that really are set by the state and do manage how our taxes are coming forward. And I fully recognize from the back of the room you're not going to be able to read this, but let me just walk you through this a little bit. So these are two examples of tax impacts for St. Francis School District. So the one on the left is for a home valued at $250,000, and the one on the right is a home valued at $375,000. So categorically, those categories that I just described, it's just pointing out of the total tax bill for that property, this is how much it breaks down to. So in the first case, the $250,000 home, the school tax is $604. Of that $604 of school tax, the first category, the gray portion bar, the pink box, is for those operating capital, long-term facility, community education leases, it's $108 of that $604. The next category is for any board-approved levy, and that would be those long-term facility bonds that I mentioned. That's about $63 of the tax. And then next is the voter-approved bonds, which is over, that was on that last slide, but about 47% of our total levy. That's about $209 of that. And then the categorical levies that are eligible for board approval, that's that local optional revenue, the equity, the referendum equity that I mentioned, 223. And then there's one more category listed at the bottom in that kind of purplish blue box, and that would be if we had a voter-approved operating referenda or capital project referenda, that would be included in there. The district does not have any. So that's listed as 0. So I just wanted to point out, I thought this was a nice slide, it came from our financial advisors. And similar situation on the right-hand side, I won't belabor this and go through all of those. But if you have an opportunity that you are linked, that's listed on the left there, you can go in and do it for your own property taxes. So when you get your tax statement, you have at the top, it tells you what your market value is. You could put that in there and it'll come out and say exactly what it is. So I thought this was a nice little tool for individuals in our community to be able to see and try it out. We'll probably put this on our webpage so that people can get to that and try that out as well to know. So this is the total picture, and this is comparing last year's levy at just over almost $14 million, and the proposed levy for the general community service and debt service for 2025, again, just under 13 million. The decrease of about 1.1 million, I think I described a fair amount of that, but a 5.4% decrease in the general fund, community at about 14.8. It's a smaller decrease, but based on a smaller base too. And then debt service decreasing about 8.5. So overall, a 7.15% decrease in tax levy. So I've gone over some of these, but just one more time, kind of go through these. LTFM, general fund, it increases by that 286, and then as you recall, then the debt service goes down by 288,000 due to that change in paying off those bonds. Local optional revenue does go up because of some increasing enrollment, and then again, this was one of those where the reduction in state aid occurs, therefore to make the district whole, the levy does increase. And then overall adjustments and abatements, about $870,000 different. Most of that, in fact, I think this whole number is in the general fund. So a significant decrease due to that, as well as some changes in the debt service. And one thing I want to remind everybody of is that the percent change in our tax levy does not equate to a percent change in our budget. So if we were in a district where, like last year, we had a significant increase by, I think it was 9%, it doesn't mean that our budget will go up 9%. It's one category, it's levy, and then sometimes when there's a decrease or an increase, as I mentioned earlier, in state aid, it changes our tax levy as well. So that's why there's fluctuations, and it's important to know that things can be different than just the pure looking at the number and looking at the percent increase. And I thought this chart was really interesting. You can see in 2023, the valuations, remember I talked about that referendum market value, so that's all taxes, homes and except the property for a farmer, just the house, garage, and 1 acre for the agricultural. And then the green bar is our net tax capacity and how much that increased in 23. So property owners in this community saw their tax values go up and probably saw some taxes going up with that. But in the last 2 years, that has dropped back down and property value increases have been to a lesser degree. I think they're lower than they were in 2017. I didn't go back to see how long it's been since property values increased by just such a small amount. But so that will help property taxpayers as well. So I kind of alluded to these, but there's 3 big variables as it relates to property taxes. So first is an estimated market value. That is done by the county assessor. That's not done by the school district. We have no say in that. And then the property classification. So that's whether it's a homestead, whether it's an apartment, it's a commercial building, agricultural. There's different property classifications, and I think I have a slide coming up that specifies those. But that's part of the calculating the property tax. And then, of course, the tax levy by the various taxing jurisdictions, which is not just the school district, it includes the city, county, and then townships as well. A couple of things to note that are nice for our homeowners is that the homestead market value exclusion, so that's that one where we all want to make sure that we've homesteaded our properties, is increasing. So it was at, I think, 475 or 400 and something. It's increasing to 517. That'll overall reduce the amount of the tax. Now keep in mind your property value is going to go up a little bit, so there's kind of a change between the two of them. But at least the homestead property exclusion will be up increased. And then the agricultural homestead classification increases significantly. So it'll reduce the taxes for those landowners that had a greater than $2.15 million in homestead category within the ag properties, excuse me. So good news on helping to lower those taxes, again, set by statute, not by something that the district can control. So again, the net tax capacity, the majority of the properties pay on that. That's 8.86 million of the overall tax. The referendum market value, the 4.13 for a total of 12,997,058. And then as promised, another really small chart. These are the different valuations I kind of described earlier. So the top is the homestead residential. the commercial, industrial, agricultural, and agricultural non-homestead. When we look at year to year, and that's what this chart is trying to show you. So the first column after the blue, different colored blue charts of the property is the valuation. In 25, then they've increased this, and this is done by PMA, our financial advisor, by 2%. And as you saw in that last chart, it was going up around 2.32. It's just trying to give you an idea that even with the increase in the valuation, our property owners should see a decrease. Not as much in the ag and ag categories, but in our local residential homestead, we should see a decrease in their property taxes for the school district portion. I want to point that out. We only control the school district portion of the taxes. So the recommendation to the school board, and we'll ask you to take action on this later, is to certify the amount of $12,997,058.45. It is a decrease of 7.15% from the previous year. And then we will welcome members of the community to speak. Just a reminder that any comments or questions during public comment needs to be relevant to the current proposed tax certification for taxes payable in 25 and be relevant to St. Francis area schools, not the city or county taxes, as we have no control. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Chair Starr.
Thank you. We have one person who signed up, Ryan Beard, to speak on taxation.
I don't know what that now. We'll talk about this, taxation in general.
Ryan Furyk, proud parent to 3 children in St. Francis area schools. And this is one of my favorite ones to sign up for all year because I feel like I get super stressed about whether or not we're going to go after the maximum amount. Because I know when I look at the opportunities for my kids and I compare regionally, we miss out on some opportunities. But bang for your buck. And I would hang a poster up out in front of County Market and yell it from the mountaintops. Bang for your buck, St. Francis area schools is strong. We can be critical about test scores, but if we do anything short of what's in front of you today, I get worried because that's different programming, it's different opportunities, it's larger class sizes, it's other struggles we'll have in other places. I just really hope that the board will not just take this opportunity to go to the maximum amount that's available in front of us today, but also generate a conversation with our community of what we could do if we did an audit and what we found around us that our kids were missing out on, and try to turn that into an opportunity for future conversations on investment in our schools. Please be proud of how the taxes went down this year. I think it was the only one on the list when I got my tax statement. Just know that there's other years when we're like the only one that goes up though too. So you gotta play both sides and be cognizant of both of them. But I'm excited for what we see in front of us today. Our community should be excited about what happened this year, at least for us, while other people are having other things happen to their taxes. But I really hope that when we're all said and done today, that you'll take advantage of this opportunity to invest in our kids, our staff, and our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ryan. All right, well, you saw, whoa, back to yes, ma'am.
Can I ask a couple of questions about her presentation?
Yeah. That's the board.
Or you, maybe, I don't know.
I think you should go.
Okay.
Go ahead and ask and then I can respond.
So, I'm Marcia Vandenberg from Oak Grove. And so when you were giving your presentation, I wasn't sure if the enrollment change was up or down based on what you were presenting.
Sure. I'll just come up here beside you, is that okay? So it was pretty flat, a little bit up, but not, we're kind of seeing a, flattening, maybe over time, we're gonna be seeing enrollment going down. And that's part of it is birth rates.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then under the community service part, there was no number for 24, I believe, under adults with disability, but there was something for this year under adults with disabilities. I don't remember, I can remember if it was 1,000 or millions, I forget. Yeah, 32, 44, what is that?
It's a category that you can levy for. I'd have to go back and see what happened in the previous year.
Okay, I was just curious.
It's programming that community ed has to offer through beginning in January.
That's
So it's
For
three
$4,000.
thousand.
Didn't they increase the age in special ed? It was 18 and now it's 21 or
No,
something?
it's all been
or-
going for years.
They increased it to 22, that's a separate.
22.
Okay, that's separate, okay.
Yeah, this is community service.
Yeah. This community,
I had to do a little research to see what the history has been on that. I mean, it's $3,000. It's not.
I know it's not much, I just didn't know.
No, it's a good question.
But I guess then my last question was, what are the plans for the large fund balance? Your fund balance is like a third of what you take in for the general,
Right.
or what that you have for your general fund.
Yeah.
So I just didn't know what
So
happens with that.
Sure, and keep in mind that the total fund balance, a fair amount of that is earmarked for,
Well, there's 22 million was unrestricted.
no, it's not, no, that's what I was trying to
Oh, okay.
describe. It's all part of those categories that we were talking about,
Yeah, come back. See, so then-
right there. So right here, it's all of those categories. It's not just unrestricted.
We'll go back to the unrestricted, or unassigned, I guess.
Well, that's what I'm saying. The unassigned is the blue bar at the bottom. All the 22 million is the assigned, restricted, non-spendable. It's all of those categories. So if you see that number 22,883?
Yeah.
Okay, and I'll go back to the budget here. So that's estimated, the number I have is including,
So under general, it says 22 million.
right, and so it's made up of all of those categories that were done.
So all those other ones that are.
Sorry, I was looking at the wrong bar on the right-hand side, the 21,144. Okay,
Yeah, I see.
yeah, it's all of those categories that make up. So the unassigned is that bottom portion.
And so that's like 10 million.
Yes,
Give or take.
roughly 10 million, and that's very close in line with what we budgeted for the year and where we thought we would end up. So
Okay.
it's 12,
So the red is
16%, I didn't
assigned,
write that down, I'm sorry.
and the green is.
which is what we said.
The green
It's the
is restricted,
Whatever.
right, yeah, and then
Okay.
the non-spendable,
Okay.
that's restricted.
So the previous one was the one that, confused me. When we went, go back. So when it says general 22.
Yep.
It's not, it wasn't clear that,
Yeah, I did speak to it on the slide, but I'm sorry, it doesn't show it on here. And
so
that's,
it's
that's
really 10 million.
why I have this.
That's unassigned. Give or take.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's a sixth. If your general fund is about, what was it, 60?
Yeah, about a
Two, so about 60, okay. So I didn't know if there were plans
yeah,
to
we
use
get
up
in.
that fund balance.
Sure, so the fund balance is set aside as needed, as we know, the school district was in statutory equity in the past, so I know it's been,
Right.
Yeah.
25 years.
yeah.
Okay, I have a question on the floor here, Bill first, and then Rob.
So I know you probably don't have the details here, but with the, unassigned balance going down, will we be below the 12% as required by policy at this point, do you know?
No. No, because the restricted is down lower, you see that? And our fund balance unassigned is pretty close to where it was.
And that's also before the audit
Yeah,
figures
Right.
for last year included, so.
Okay,
Yeah, we'll be above that.
okay.
and I can update this for you when we get through the audit then. And then we'll do the revised budget for 24-25, and then you'll have that as well.
Perfect,
So,
thank you.
Yeah.
Rob?
Yeah, I was just gonna state basically the same thing in policy, it just states that we need a fund balance at 12%.
12%.
Annette, question?
I have a couple of questions, but I'll just start and then maybe get around to the rest. What was the number that you sent over to the state for enrollment to come up with the numbers that you came up with?
Should have brought the actual levy certification. I can go back and look. I don't have it right here.
Okay, at some point, if you
Okay.
can just get that for me.
Okay.
Can I have one?
Of course.
Okay. What was my other question? The equity versus a levy, can you explain that again a little bit? So we can't get a levy passed, our stakeholders, don't vote for that, so the equity kicks in.
It's kind of called the referenda equity levy. So as school districts across the state can't pass a referenda or are well below what other school districts are, that is some additional revenue that you can get to compensate the school district for lack of a referendum.
And how's that determined, that amount?
It's
State
by
legislature.
formula through the state legislature. We don't have any control. It just shows up on our levy certification. And I'm pretty sure it's tied to student enrollment as well.
Yeah, we could provide the formula to you
Yeah.
because it's right on the levy certification sheets. So we can provide that to you so you can at least see how it's calculated.
Just
What, Amy?
to comment with the fund balance, I know there was, talk during negotiations that there was a spend down of the fund balance, and you can kind of see that blue line drop a little bit.
Yeah, some of the,
And some of the concern is, and I hope we're going in the right direction, is that we don't want to become a bank and having that increase every year, that we're using those dollars on our staff, because we are limited in the amount of money that we get from the state. Although this is the avenue, I mean, a lot of these formulas are set by the state of Minnesota, because we as a school board don't set levies, we just approve the levy that the state basically went through and formulated however they formulate, but. So we're above the 12%, where are we at that number, do you know?
I didn't write that down, I'm sorry, that levy, the audit report will be coming, but I know it's around that 12%.
Yeah, because that's where we want to be, and I just want that.
Yep.
So that is because we know our staff is watching, and to make sure that we're not increasing those numbers, but yet also keeping a healthy fund balance, because that also is important for our district. And the health of the district is to have a fund balance, so.
And your school board policy practice of having a certain percentage is spot on with what the board should be doing as well. But, so as I mentioned, January we'll have that audit report, that'll be your first indication of where we ended up in 2024. Then about 3 weeks later, you get a revised budget for 24-25. That again will then incorporate any changes in that, in the audit findings for the audit results for our levies, and then that will be increased. So this chart will change for 24-25, both years.
Ms. Pam?
I just want to make a comment too about that general fund. When we're able to keep it at the 12%, we were able to get that lower bond rate also. So it makes the health of our, and in case of an emergency, if something happens, we've got some fund balance that we can take care of things in an emergency. But it also helped us lower that bond interest rate, which reduced everybody's taxes. So it's good that way. It's just good to have something in the bank, not growing like Ms. Kelly said, but get a solid amount. So it's good we stay there.
Mike and I can remember years sitting on here where we were worried about how many teachers we were gonna hire in the fall, because that might throw us off in the fall and throw us in the negative, we were so close. So it's a good thing to be at 12% and healthy. But again, we don't wanna see those numbers growing substantially, because that means we're not spending the money where we should, and that's what 80% of our budget is our teachers, and it's even higher than that when you throw in everything else, so.
And then,
People,
I have one more question. Our debt service is at 46.3%. Is that a good place to be? I mean, where should that be if not there?
There's no set guidelines on that. I mean, if you're in a district where you're either one, building new schools because you're growing, your debt service is gonna go up. Or you're in a district where your buildings are old and you need to pass a bond and replenish, or you need to add on. So there isn't here's the magic number for debt service. Yeah, we're still pretty low overall. I don't know what the total capacity is, that will be in the audit as well, of what they estimate what the total capacity is. I'm sure you're well under it, I haven't researched it here. It's not out of line. Yeah.
Okay, well, you just saw the most complex, system of school is funding. And, again, I said before, Governor Valenti put together a task force years ago, and down MSBA, with standing room only, to hear the report. And, they could not come up with a good way for funding of education. And they worked months and months in the task force. They couldn't come up with a good idea. That's how complex this doggone funding is for school districts. All right, well, thank you very much. Any further questions, comments? All right.
Thank you. I'll send out, enrollment and then formula for equity to all. Thanks for your questions.
Okay, St. Francis High School, student council report, no one's here tonight for, so admin report is next, sir.
All right, I just have a few issues to highlight. First of all, at the, I believe the November 12th meeting, there's a question or a comment about the painting in one of the rooms in the high school that had the word Mao in the lower right-hand corner. So I checked out the painting and saw for myself. It is a tribute to Bang Pao, who is Laotian, was born in Laos, and he was a strong ally of the United States in the war against communist Vietnam. Incidentally, he moved to Montana as a political refugee and then moved to California. But so he's a hero among people and was a strong ally of the United States. So a former St. Francis student created the painting and included her name, Mao, in the lower right-hand corner. So the poster is highlighting Bang Pao, but Mao is on the poster because that's the name of the student who drew the painting. So I just wanted to clarify that. The other couple things I'll highlight. First of all, the high school art department is really strong. And sometimes, you know, we don't talk about it enough, but they have an art show for first trimester classes, and they announced who won the award, so I listed those, you know, on the chart. And then as another attachment, there are pictures of the paintings and drawings. They're unbelievable, absolutely unbelievable. So please take your time to take a look. And, you know, if you know any of the students, please reach out to them because it's really amazing work. So I want to thank the high school art department and the students for everything they do. Included the discipline data as well as the status of the challenge books in the report. I'm kind of changing it around as, you know, I learned better ways, I hope, of presenting that information. A few other things that are not listed. Perhaps most important tonight, I too want to recognize the board members who are leaving. Pam Johnson, Amy Kelly, and Mike Starr. We had a nice gathering before the board meeting where several people made comments, and I just want to echo those comments again. You know, I've been working with schools for for over 30 years, and so I know the pressure that board members are under. And it takes a lot of time, commitment, tough decision-making, disagreements, but I really feel that our board and our school district is really focused on students as it should be. So thank you for your years of service. Pam with 4 years, Amy with 21 years, and Mike with 12 years. So thank you. Also, Fox 9 had a report on St. Francis that I think there was a report at 5 o'clock today as well as 6 o'clock today. I did not see either one, but it's about the new policy that was decided 2 weeks ago as far as removing books. And so I'll be anxious to watch that report to see how it transpired. But I just want everyone to know that it's out there. I did hear back, by the way, Jill, from the MDE today about well, 2 weeks ago, I think at the very end of that discussion, you asked me to reach out to the attorney and to the Minnesota Department of Education to better understand consequences. So I reached out to them that night, actually, you know, before I left the meeting or the room here. I emailed both, and it got lost, I think, in the MDE's general mailbox. So I sent them a follow-up today and heard back from their media lead. And of course, she forwarded it to other people in the department, so I haven't heard any official response yet, but at least they have it and they'll look into it and let us know. One thing I'll highlight, I maybe should have said it during the levy certification, because there will be some very expensive technology needs that really need to be addressed sooner rather than later. So I would think that during the revised budget that DD provides, we'll need to increase our expenditure budget for technology. The most significant need right now has to do with the middle school network. Not only the service coming in, but the switches that work with the network. And, we don't know the cost yet, but it is going on all the time, and it's going to be a disaster for states testing unless we figure things out. That is one example of a whole bunch of technology needs that we have throughout the district. So we're actually going to compile a list of all those needs to fully replace the network in the next 3 to 5 years. And it's, and we're not talking tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands, we're talking multiple millions of dollars of needs. So just to let you know that it's coming our way. Originally we had a plan to address those needs with the levy that didn't pass a year ago, but the needs are still there, so we need to factor some of that into some future decision making. In addition to that, we have to talk about at some point, considering to replace our student computers district-wide because they're about 5 years old now. We've got many of them as COVID started, and we've had some since then, but we do have to turn those over. So anyway, just to let you know that's coming up, and I want to make sure you guys know that we are aware of it. We're concerned. We're doing some planning, and that is all I have, unless you have some questions.
First question on the technology timeline, I'm sure you're going to, but when you provide that, we do have it prioritized as the largest need as we go down.
Yeah, or at least the most immediate and urgent need, yes.
And then with the media coverage on our 6065, can you provide us with some guidance on how you'd like school board members to respond to media inquiries, and then who you would like to see as the designated spokesperson for the district?
Yeah, unless the board has decided something different that I'm not aware of, usually the superintendent is the lead spokesperson with that.
And or the board chair.
Okay, yeah, so that's how we have typically done it. I don't know if it specifically says that in writing anywhere, but that's common practice in schools and certainly recommended by the School Board Association.
So typically then, if we were approached, we would refer them and not respond. So just, we would not respond, we would say, we need to talk to the chair about that or the superintendent.
Yep, and then we'll take it from there.
Yeah.
Any other questions for me?
For revenue report, go let that in there. There was false information put out at our last consideration of visitors, and we didn't speak up at that point. We want to verify some information first, and the information was completely false. There is no pornography in our media center. We had community members who have pornography. We do not have it anywhere. We do not have any hidden curriculum or agendas. Nothing is hidden. Parents can all get access to our curriculum. There's nothing hidden for curriculum. I just want to make sure that's public out there because it was put up at that podium. And we want to verify first before we say anything. So I'm going to make sure we get that cleared up.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up because I had it written down and then I skipped to the art show stuff. So I'm sorry about that.
Okay, anything else? Questions?
Just a comment to ensure that as we move forward, it's always been past practice that the decision of the board, whether you like it or not, you move forward and you support the will of the board. And if there's any discrepancy, it would go then be with the superintendent and the board chair that individual board members don't have the ability to contact or, you know, yeah,
Represent maybe.
or stir up or just whatever. It's the, if you read our code of conduct, it's pretty clear in there. So just as you're moving forward, remember to follow your code of conduct. And if you have questions or concerns, to contact the superintendent and the school board chair.
Any other comments, questions? If not, thank you, Mr. Superintendent. Action items, first one up will be the final levy certification. Is there a motion to adopt? Thank you, Annette. Is there a second? Thank you, Rob. Discussion, Annette.
I'd like to, pull 524 for discussion, so.
No, we're not.
That's the next item. We're almost.
We're on 6.1.
Oh, we're on the levy certification.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay, any discussion? It was discussed and talked about. If not, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes for the final levy certification. So we're gonna take from your side of the house now and get that forwarded to the state. So,
Amy signed the form tonight, thank you.
yeah, thank you very much. Okay, next up, 6.2, approval of policy revision. There's a whole bunch of policies here. Motion. Yeah, let's take a motion to accept first. Motion? Thank you. Second?
Second.
By Pam, thank you. Discussion, Annette.
I'd like to pull 524 for separate discussion.
524? You said?
Yes,
524.
yes.
Okay. Pull 524 for discussion. Okay, so under 503, 601, 604, 608, 609, 615, 616, 624, and 708. Any discussion, issues? If not, all in favor say aye. Opposed? Those policies pass. 524, go ahead, Annette.
I just have questions, because it looks like we redlined 1, 2, and 3 on page 9 of policy 524. Just looking for an explanation or thought process about why you took it from where it was originally and put it into the superintendent's lab. So just looking for some clarification.
Okay, Brandon, did you catch up? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think that's a reflection of there's a new law put in place with the last legislature in regards to the cell phone use. That had a recommendation for what school districts put in place for policy. There has to be a policy. This wording meets the requirement to have the policy, but it also allows the administrators, in particular from different student levels, to refine what the cell phone use is going to be for those students, because it might vary from age to age. It doesn't have to, but it might. And so it's been updated because of that legislation, and so that's why the 3 were removed. That was prior to the legislation, the model language, and then what was added in place is a result of the legislation.
So,
So the new legislation says that we can't, as a school board, say, no phones allowed in the buildings or in the classrooms, is what you're telling me. They're saying that we can't say that as a school board as a whole.
What does the
can,
statute say?
or the school board can. But related to that, is the underlying verbiage consistent with what the MSBA suggested?
Correct, yeah. To answer your question, the school board is able to determine that. The language that's presented is the recommended language for school districts to adopt that meets the statute. But I don't think, I didn't read the paragraph that we're adding, but I don't think it says anything about the school, doesn't belong to the school board.
And if I can give a little context, right now, this refers, I can't read it. Directs the superintendent and administrators to establish rules and procedures, about cell phone use. And so we have that information in the current student handbook. And what I think we could and should do is review that current language in the handbook at some point this spring and decide if we want to keep it or if we want to change it or ban cell phones, for example. You know, we can decide that because we want to hear from board members in terms of, you know, what your expectations are. And then we can take that into revising the student handbook. Does that kind of make sense?
Yep.
Okay.
Hey, Jill, and then Pam. Jill?
Yeah, the statute 121A73, directed by the school districts or charter schools must adopt a policy, possession and use of cell phones by March 15, 2025. And elementary school principals and the Association of Secondary Principals must collaborate to make best practices available. So that was implemented, or that was approved this 2024.
Okay, Pam?
Okay, that was my question. So it basically says the principals have to be involved, is that what, like?
Minnesota Elementary School Principal Association and Minnesota Association of Secondary School Principals must collaborate to make the best practices available to schools on a range of different strategies in order to minimize the impact of cell phones on student behavior, mental health, and academic performance.
And so those are two principal organizations. One organization represents elementary principals. Another organization represents the secondary principals. And so they collaborated, you know, and presented a report, you know, I think it's called a toolkit. You know, I don't remember the exact name, but they've already done that work and then shared it with administrators, you know, giving options essentially.
Okay, so basically, what I hear you saying is the statute said there has to be a collaboration and a recommendation, not necessarily stating what schools can and can't do, because that still lies within the school board.
Oh, yeah, definitely. It's
Okay,
up
so
to the
that's,
school board,
okay,
yes.
so that's what I heard. I don't know why we do these statutes and stuff that aren't really the recommendations are.
Yeah, and so those two
So I see.
organizations did that work.
Okay,
And they didn't provide recommendations, they kind of gave options.
Yeah,
you know, and it was really well done.
Yeah.
And so, you know, and that's.
so they got
acceptable by
input
everyone.
into it, so then the school districts can look at that. So this basically is just putting it into the superintendent and administration's hands, but you're saying, you're basically saying, but we can review that, the board can review that in the handbook
Oh,
and have discussion around that as to whether that's working or not working or what is recommended.
yeah, right. And it would be nice to do mid to late spring, you know.
Getting ready for the next year.
Yeah, so approving this policy, if we approve this tonight, then we've met the March 15th deadline. We're done with that because we have a policy in place. But we can and should still talk about it and decide what we want to do for next year.
But we already had a policy in place.
Yeah, that's
Stated
true.
here.
Yeah,
So we
it's just a
did meet
different
the
wording.
requirement already. We've just revised it now because
Right.
based on
Mhm.
the options.
Yeah, but it's not
But it
taking
was
the
here.
authority away from the local school board. Yeah, that's the last thing we want to do. And so I'm thinking probably in late February, March, maybe April, we can have that, maybe even as a work session to talk about, or at least as a report, so we can decide if we want to make some significant changes to the current procedure.
But it kind of does take it out of, because here, it's, you guys could decide in January to change. This doesn't lay anything out specifically, whereas the top part did. I mean, the red line part did. So now you're basically, administration now is in charge. It did take it out of the school board's hands, because you guys can do whatever you want based on January, February, March, or whenever, right? This kind of leaves it wide open.
But
To
I'm
change
telling
if you think it needs to be changed. I'm not saying that's a good thing or a bad thing, I'm just saying it is now in your realm of decision-making, not in the school
and
board.
that may be the case, but what I'm saying is that I will bring. it
Correct,
forward.
right,
Yeah, I think it's real for.
Right.
big,
I'm just saying that it
decision
leaves it
points.
flexible though for you guys to make decisions anytime. If you need to.
Yes, but the board still has the ultimate
Right.
authority, and you can take that away anytime, so.
Yeah.
But yeah, what I'm saying is that I want to bring that up,
Exactly.
you know, because I think we need to hear feedback from the principals, you know, and possibly others,
Right.
you know, about the impact of cell phones. You know, it's really a non-issue at the elementaries. I never see cell phones at the elementaries, and rarely do I at the middle school unless they've been sanctioned for a good reason. I see them once in a while in the high school, but it's not as significant as it has been in the past. But we need to hear from teachers, from principals, possibly students and parents, and then, you can tell us how we should change the handbook if you want us to change it, we'll make it happen.
Amy?
My guess there will be discussion, there's already lots of discussion on whether or not there should be cell phones in schools. And so I would guess that this will be a topic of discussion, but the school board at any time, because you do it through policy, can change it. And I would say our administration is always, as they should be, talking about these circumstances within the buildings of whether or not there should be, I think it was 2 years ago, we took out the hats. I mean, that didn't come from the school board, that came from principals who are in the buildings with the students and saying, we think you should allow, I think it was hats in the building, and we approved it.
Yeah.
So this again, it was just allowing our administration to
It makes it more
communicate.
flexible.
Yeah.
It makes it more flexible.
Right.
Okay, so is there a motion to accept 524?
So,
Thank you, a second. Thank you, Pam. Discussion? No discussion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much. All policies have been approved. Upcoming meetings and preliminary reports, topics, I should say. New board coming in here in about 3 or 4 weeks. Talk to them, not me.
Was that your report?
All right, school board member report. Start over with Miss Amy.
Don't have anything other than it's been a great 21-year run. I love this community, and I'll be watching and cheering you on from afar. So keep up the good work and just continue to respect each other at this board table, even during the hard discussions, that everyone here has a voice. And when you're speaking, that voice deserves to be heard and deserves to be respected. So then you make the vote, and then as a board, since I've been here for 21 years, you respect the will of the board and you move on and you go on to the next venture that it is. And that's how it's always been here, and I hope that continues. So, good luck to the new board members, and I trust that and will hope that decisions are always made of what you feel is in the best interest of the students, because I would hope that's why you sit in this chair is for the little ones who don't have a voice. So, that's all.
Thank you. Rob?
Last weekend I attended the delegate assembly. If anybody wants to see what passed or wants any more information, let me know. I can let you look at this or send you to the website. And to Pam, Mike, and Amy, just thank you for all you've done for the districts the last number of years. It's been an honor to serve with you. So thank you.
Ms. Pam?
So I just want to thank the community for allowing me to sit in this chair for the last 4 years. It's been educational, it's been challenging, it's been fun and all that, all wrapped up. I hope that in the future that we can have more community involvement and more people sitting in chairs out here so they can kind of see how things run and get their voices heard. Thanks so much to the administrative staff. You've been awesome to work with. You're always there for any questions, no matter how complicated or simple that they have been. So appreciate all the support and really appreciated being able to serve on this board for 4 years. So thanks.
Ms. Annette?
I would like to also thank Mike and Amy and Pam for their years of service. And this is our last meeting for 2025. So I want to wish everybody a very Merry Christmas. And if you're traveling, travel safely. And we will see you in the new year.
Thank you. Nate?
Just wanted to say that I've personally witnessed between the board meetings, some of our staff go above and beyond their daily duties, their daily responsibilities in order to support activities across our district, not just sporting activities, but band, the art show. And really, it's really makes your heart full to see our staff step up and do that to allow opportunities for our students. So I think it's one of the reasons it makes our district great. So I just wanted to say appreciative of that. And then to Pam, Amy, and Mike, thank you for your years of service. Thank you for your mentorship and your guidance. Even though we may not agree on everything, we have good conversations. And Amy, thank you of the respect thing is a huge piece, so I appreciate that.
Ms. Gilson?
So I'm gonna echo the sentiments of my peers. Thank you all, Pam, Amy, and Mike for your years of service. Amy and Mike have been, for 10 years together so far, I think it is, or 8 years, it's been a long time. And so we rode a roller coaster of agreeing and disagreeing, and Amy and I have been on policy for all of that time, which, there's only been one policy that we haven't agreed on, which says a lot about us being able to come to a mutual understanding on policies. I'm gonna miss the conversations with you guys. But I wish you well in your new endeavors, your future endeavors, and don't be strained. Come back. We had one former board member come back tonight. They don't come back very often, but be good to see you guys. And have a Merry Christmas and safe travels.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's been a long 12 years. It's interesting, in 12 years, way back, we were statutory debt of $3.5–4 million. That was ugly. We were together, Amy and I, and we hit that thing. No pay raises, no programs, no supplies, no nothing, cut. State gave us 5 years to come out of debt, we did it in 3 years. But there was a big program for us back there. Superintendents, Mike Wyatt, Ed Saxon, Troy Ferguson, Beth Geis, and Carson Anderson, I worked with over the last 12 years. So that's been an interesting time for each and every one of our superintendents. We've had failed bonds, failed levies, and then of course the big one came through, $80,060,000. When y'all walk through the schools now, walk through our building, you can see where $80 million went to. I think it's fantastic. We're still short. Facilities met here a couple weeks ago. Looking ahead here down the road, we just found out about technology right here. A lot of work for the future board members that we have to be understanding what we need to do to keep the school district up and running. The outstanding staff that we have, our cabinets, our principals, assistant principals, teachers, EAs, cooks, bus drivers, mechanics, grounds, maintenance people, and of course the compassion of our board members will make our school district successful. I'm a firm believer in hiring professional people and letting them do their jobs. I've been that way in military days for years, and my soldiers always told me, sir, when you left us, you let us do our job, you did not micromanage us. And that's why I was successful in my military career. I let my boys and girls, soldiers and soldierettes, I would say, right, do their job. And they enjoyed doing the job they had out there. I didn't interfere with them. So we have professional people, continue to do the job, that's why you're there. Now, the biggest thing I see happening for us all, St. Francis has a brand new city hall. Beautiful building. And what does it face? The bus barn. Sooner or later, St. Francis City Hall is gonna say, you know what, that ugly bus barn over there, we gotta do something. So I'm just hoping they come to the table someday and make a big agreement with us. What can we do to improve that corner of our city? They're gonna come to us someday. They're gonna see it every single day now. And maybe it's a positive force. 2 more things that I've left here. One, I'm not gonna miss the 3 a.m. wake ups anymore. I have woken up many times at 3, 4 in the morning. Damn, last night's meeting. We forgot about this. We forgot that. What about? I'm not gonna miss my 3 a.m. wake ups anymore.
I'm with you, 3 o'clock. What is it with 3 o'clock?
That's right. And the last thing I have to say is, hey, don't forget, our last meeting is tonight. That's true. We're turning our computers into Vanessa tonight, right?
Yep.
Yes, if something big happens, we're still a board. We'll call a special meeting and we'll come back together. Otherwise, January 6th is when the new board takes over. But if something big happens, we are still a board and I'll call a special meeting and we'll take care of that problem right away. So just be aware of that. Don't be surprised. Well, I thought I'm done. No, you're not done until about 6:30, 6:35 on January 6th. All right, any questions, any issues, that kind of stuff? If not, I call our last board meeting for this year at, 7:47, 7:48. There we go, folks. Turn your computers in, those of you who are leaving us. Otherwise, Vanessa's gonna chase you down.
Short timer.
That's right.